Welcome back to the deep dive. So today, well, we're tackling something pretty fundamental, aren't we? Money. We're doing a deep dive based on the text. From whips to wages, money, power, and the quest for a compassionate economy. And our mission really is to get past that standard view of money as just neutral, a tool for exchange. We want to explore how it actually functions as a system of power, maybe even coercion.
Exactly. And that leads us right into, well, a huge historical question. How did society shift? How did we move from, ruling people with the threat of actual violence, the literal whip, to controlling them with something seemingly invisible, the wallet?
The wallet as a tether, that's a powerful image.
It really is. It's about a shift from external physical control to something more internal, psychological. It shapes pretty much everything about modern life.
Okay, so let's unpack the history first. Early on, power structures were, well, pretty brutal.
Absolutely. Think direct fear. Slavery, tributes demanded forced labor. It was visible coercion.
You obeyed, or you faced the consequences. Directly. The text calls it the literal whip. No ambiguity there.
But that kind of direct oversight, it has limits, right?
Mhm.
Especially when empires grow. You just can't watch everyone everywhere all the time.
It's inefficient.
Highly inefficient. And this is where money starts to emerge, not just for trade, but as a really clever technology, a technology for governing at scale.
How so? How does it allow that scaling?
Well, rulers could standardize things,
Yeah.
make demands across vast territories,
Yeah.
extract resources without needing an army on every doorstep.
And the key mechanism the sources point to, it sounds almost mundane, but it's genius in a way, taxation.
Precisely. The rulers mint their own coins, maybe put their face on them, and then declare, you owe us taxes.
And crucially,
You must pay these taxes only in the specific currency we've just issued.
so even if you're a self-sufficient farmer, maybe bartering locally, suddenly you need the king's money.
Exactly. You might not have needed it for your daily life at all before that point, but now you're forced to get it. You have to sell your grain or your time, your labor, whatever, in the market that uses the ruler's currency.
Just to pay the taxman and stay out of trouble.
Right. And boom, you're integrated. Pulled into the state-controlled economic sphere, whether you wanted to be or not.
And this wasn't just some accidental byproduct. The text mentions colonial powers using this quite deliberately.
Oh, absolutely. The example of French administrators in Africa is stark. They imposed head taxes, payable only in French francs.
Not just for revenue, but explicitly.
Explicitly, quote, for mobilizing resources. They knew it would force villagers out of subsistence farming and into wage labor on plantations or infrastructure projects just to earn those francs.
Wow. Okay, so currency plus taxation. It becomes this subtler instrument of control.
Less overtly violent than the whip, for sure. But the coercion is still there, woven into the fabric of survival. You have to participate.
That's the invisible tether. It binds you to the system.
It really does. And that sets the stage perfectly for the modern era, doesn't it?
It does. Which brings us to wage labor. We talk about being free in a legal sense, no more slavery or serfdom, which is huge, obviously. But the text argues that for most people lacking independent wealth, that freedom is, well, conditional.
Very conditional. Because the threat shifts. It's no longer the master's whip, but the whip of necessity. Hunger, eviction, poverty.
The fear of not making ends meet.
Exactly. And this leads to what some thinkers call internalized discipline, meaning the coercion moves inside. You discipline yourself, you show up on time, you accept difficult conditions, you push yourself harder.
Not because someone's standing over you with a stick.
But because the rent is due.
Yeah.
The bills are piling up. That fear becomes the internal driver. The whip is now psychological.
And people recognized this ages ago. It's not some radical new idea.
Not at all. You quoted Oscar Wilde earlier. We have chains, though no eye beholds them.
And we are slaves, though men call us free.
Powerful stuff. And Frederick Douglass, too, pointing out that even after emancipation, economic vulnerability could mean being bound by invisible chains.
So theorists who look at money, like the chartalists you mentioned, they see this power dynamic clearly.
Yes, chartalism basically argues that money isn't primarily a market phenomenon that the state just regulates.
It's more fundamental than that.
They'd say money is fundamentally a creature of the state, issued by the state, often driven by the state's need to provision itself through taxation. The tax liability creates the initial demand for the state's token.
So the state uses it to direct resources and labor, just like in those historical examples.
Exactly. Money is embedded in power structures. It's not separate from them. And because survival depends on it, people conform. They police themselves.
Which leads to this pervasive financial stress we see everywhere. It's like the old master's whip, but impersonal, diffused through the whole system.
Yeah, it's a constant background anxiety for so many.
Okay, so if that's the setup, then we hit this ethical problem. The source calls it the golden rule paradox.
Right. Most ethical systems, most people, intuitively, value compassion, empathy, treating others as you'd want to be treated. The golden rule. But the dominant economic system, based on scarcity, competition, hierarchy, it often seems to reward the opposite.
How so?
Well, think about it. If the main goal is maximizing profit or shareholder value, then actions we might see as compassionate, like paying much higher wages, investing heavily in environmental protection beyond regulations, prioritizing community well-being over quarterly returns, these can put a company at a competitive disadvantage.
So the system itself incentivizes, maybe not outright cruelty, but a certain kind of disregard, prioritizing the bottom line over people or planet.
It structurally incentivizes extraction and externalizing costs, you could say. Kindness becomes a liability almost. It directly subverts our urge to follow the golden rule in many economic contexts.
And there's actual psychological research backing this up. It's not just a philosophical idea.
Yeah, the text digs into some fascinating and frankly, slightly disturbing studies.
Like what?
Well, some research suggests that people with higher socioeconomic status can become, on average, less attuned to the emotions and needs of others. Like the constant focus on competition and individual achievement might subtly erode empathy.
Really? Less attuned?
That's what some studies indicate, and it gets even more specific.
Okay.
Experiments have shown that just priming people with money-related concepts, getting them to think about money, even subconsciously, can make them slightly more likely to act unethically in certain situations, like being less helpful or more willing to lie for personal gain.
Wow. So just the idea of money can shift our behavior towards self-interest.
It seems it can activate a kind of transactional mindset, maybe. Less communal, more calculating. The skills needed to succeed in the current system, accumulation, negotiation, maybe a degree of detachment, might actually conflict with our deeper ethical impulses.
Which explains why so many people feel dissatisfied, even if they're doing okay financially. There's this internal conflict between values and system demands.
Exactly. A deep disconnect.
So if the problem is that deep, baked into the system's DNA, fixing it means changing that DNA. This brings us to the alternative vision in the text, the Chazon system.
Right. Chazon, Hebrew for vision. It's less a rigid blueprint, more a set of principles for designing an economy around dignity and well-being, drawing on lots of existing ideas.
Okay, what are the key parts?
Well, the absolute foundation, Pillar A, is baseline security.
Which means?
Guaranteed basic needs. Food, shelter, healthcare, education. For everyone, unconditionally, whether through something like a universal basic income, UBI, or maybe guaranteed basic services.
And the point of that is?
To remove the whip, to take survival off the table as leverage. If people aren't terrified of destitution, they can interact as equals. They can say no to exploitation. It affirms basic human dignity.
Okay, removing the fear factor. What's next? Pillar B.
Pillar B is about moving beyond just one kind of money. It proposes multiple currencies.
Why? Isn't one national currency simpler?
Simpler, maybe, but also maybe too blunt an instrument. A single currency has to handle everything from global finance to local favors. The idea here is they have different types of money for different purposes, like an ecology of money. You'd still have a national currency, sure, but maybe alongside local community currencies or special credits.
Can you give an example? Like, how would that work?
Okay, think about time banks. You spend an hour helping a neighbor paint their fence, you earn one-time credit. You can then spend that credit to get an hour of help from someone else, maybe babysitting or fixing your computer.
Regardless of the market value of painting versus IT support.
Exactly. 1 hour equals 1 hour.
Okay.
It values everyone's contribution equally and recognizes work that the formal market often ignores or underpays: care work, community building, things vital for a healthy society.
Interesting. Reinforces different values. What's Pillar C?
Pillar C tackles the ecological crisis head-on. Ecological and social credits.
Making saving the planet profitable.
Essentially, yes. Structurally rewarding positive actions. Imagine earning eco-credits for planting trees, restoring a wetland, demonstrably reducing your carbon footprint.
And these credits would have real value.
They could be tradable, maybe usable to pay taxes or exchange for goods and services. It builds environmental and social regeneration right into the economic incentives, rather than just relying on penalties or goodwill.
Okay, that's innovative. And the final pillar, D.
Pillar D gets back to the root of control. transparency and democracy in how money is created and managed.
Taking it out of the shadows.
Precisely. Moving money creation away from often opaque private banks focused solely on profit towards more public or community-based control with real transparency.
So people can actually see how it works, maybe have a say?
Yes. Reduce the ability for hidden manipulation, artificial scarcity, or crises engineered for gain. Make monetary policy serve the public good, openly.
Okay, this Chazon vision. It's ambitious. Baseline security, multiple currencies, eco-credits, democratic control. It sounds utopian, almost. What about the risks? Isn't this just swapping one kind of control for another, maybe a vast, inefficient bureaucracy? Where's the freedom in that?
That's a really important question. And the text doesn't ignore it. It emphasizes this isn't about replacing capitalism with rigid central planning. It's about finding a dynamic balance.
A balance between what?
Between the strengths of different approaches. You want to keep the innovation, the dynamism, the personal freedom that, well, capitalism can foster when it works well. But you need to integrate that with a focus on social justice, on meeting basic needs, on solidarity, things often associated more with socialist or communal traditions. It's about harnessing incentives, not eliminating them.
But the classic criticism, you hear it all the time. If you guarantee everyone's basic survival, won't motivation just evaporate?
Right.
Who will do the hard jobs?
That criticism assumes the only motivator is fear the whip of poverty. But is that really true? People are motivated by lots of things, right? Creativity, mastery, purpose, status, contributing to their community.
So the idea is removing the survival threat frees people up to pursue those higher motivations.
Exactly. The Chazon model still allows for individual success, for innovation, for wealth creation even, but the incentives are designed to align more with the common good, not purely with private accumulation at any cost. You're rewarded for creating real value, social or ecological value included.
And what about the risk of changing things, disruption, unknown consequences?
Well, the counterargument is look at the risks of the status quo, growing inequality, climate breakdown, social polarization. Those are pretty massive risks too, aren't they?
Hard to argue with that.
So the idea isn't necessarily a sudden revolution, but maybe gradual, targeted shifts towards a system that offers more long-term stability and, frankly, more dignity.
So bringing it all together, what's the ultimate goal here for money itself? What should its purpose be?
The goal is a fundamental shift in perspective. It's about reclaiming the original meaning of economy, or oikonomia.
Which, remind us.
It's Greek for household management, managing the collective household society, the planet for the well-being of all its members.
As opposed to
crematistics, which is just the art of accumulating money for its own sake. We need an economy that serves life, not the other way around.
And the core belief is that systems shape our behavior.
Absolutely. If you remove that constant, grinding fear of survival, that existential whip, you actually free people up. You allow their better impulses, their capacity for cooperation and creativity to come forward more easily.
It's a profound shift in thinking. It requires, as the text says, collective will, but also a huge amount of imagination.
It does. To see money not just as it is, this tool of control often, but as what it could be, a tool to connect us, to facilitate cooperation, to reflect our shared values.
Turning the whip into a bond.
That's a good way to put it. Building an economy where compassion isn't just a nice extra, but part of the basic structure.
So the final thought we want to leave you, the listener, with is this. If money is indeed a technology of power, and it seems hard to argue it isn't, then we have to ask, what kind of society do we want this powerful technology to build? What values should it embed? Could we design an economic system where we'd genuinely be okay trading places with anyone within it, knowing that dignity and compassion were the foundational currency, something to think about?